Hi there, YouTube. It has been a while since I posted on this channel. So I thought, since Murders of Karlov Manor is tomorrow, we do a classic Kevin video of opening up a pre-release pack and seeing what we get and then building a deck out of it, and I will be using this for League. So, if you have been watching this channel for a long time, we do this with every set. We allow our participants at the pre-release to use their pre-release decks after the tournament for what we call League, which is a weekly event. Well, actually, you can play anyone on any day, but you just show up, bring your pre-release deck, and play someone else that has a similar deck. And then every loss, you can add a pack to your pool, and every week, you can also add a pack to your pool. And by the time that League is done over the series of a few weeks, we actually play League from release to release. So Murders of Karlov Manor will be the format we'll be playing until the next pre-release occurs. You actually have like a pretty cool deck by the end of it. And what I really love about this, I've explained this in videos in the past, is I don't really feel fulfilled, if that's a good expression, of getting all of the like beautiful mechanics and playing with enough of the cards. The problems that I have with like standard and other constructed formats is 90% of the cards are unplayable. And there are a lot of fun cards in Magic the Gathering that just aren't competitive playable. And I actually think that the beauty of Magic the Gathering is experiencing those cards and those mechanics that don't quite get pushed to the power level of a Shieldred, but you end up with some very interesting board states and interesting mechanics and interactions that occur in limited. But the problem with limited is it's too limited in the fact that you play like a pre-release, you play this, what, 4 or 5 games? If you're at a bigger police, maybe 6 or 7 games, and you're done with it. What if you opened up a cool combo or a cool concept and you actually never got to see it play? There are so many times I'll draft this amazing, what was it last week that we drafted? I think it was Ravnica remastered, and I can't remember exactly what the combo that I drafted, and didn't see it once out of the 3 games we played, and I was so bummed. So what I like about this kind of intermediate between constructed and limited, which what we call leagues, is you get to play these enough and you get to start constructing towards a deck while still within limitations. If you've seen some of my complaints about Commander, I think the Commander, the pool is so big, and what I call the evergreen cards in Commander are so many at this point that it feels like no matter what Commander I choose, I keep playing the same cards over and over. And this is kind of the same problem with Modern and Pioneer and Standard at this point, is if you're in black, you're running Shieldred. Why would you not? It's just a powerful card, and it just goes in every strategy. So limited is where my heart is. I call this channel the Rogue Deck Builder because I used to love constructing decks and building decks, but at heart I'm still a limited player, and this kind of is the like I said, the intermediate between the best of both worlds, constructing towards something and really getting a feel for the entire set and the mechanics while still with a nice limited pool and having to challenge yourself with a limited pool. So if you are interested in doing this with your play group, something we do at our store here is we do offer our patron tiers. If you go over to patreon.com/rogue deck builder, we do allow you to purchase pre-release kits at distributor price. And I think the cost of these suckers right now are going to be either 21 or 22. I haven't 100% nailed down the price of these, but I highly encourage you, is if your store, your local game store, does not do this with your friends. Grab some pre-release kits, build some decks. You can do this with play packs as well, and then start a league with amongst. You just need people that are willing to show up and play, and it's a very, very fun experience. It still is my favorite way of experiencing Magic the Gathering. So head over to patreon.com/rogue deck builder. You can find pre-release kits. You can find everything that you are looking for your gaming needs, from sleeves to deck boxes to other games to things like Lorcana. We got you covered. So I'd love to have you aboard on the service and a part of the community. We do have a very active Discord and whatnot. So shilling aside, without the patron plug there, let's get back to this pre-release kit and see what we're working with. And then what I'll give you my initial thoughts of what I'd build, or what I am going to build. I might not end up building this, because a lot of times I look at the pool again and decide there are better routes to go. I haven't looked at the mechanics whatsoever in this. I do plan on doing a top 10 cards from Karlov Manor that I do want to play in constructed, So be looking for that video. I'll probably have it out within the next few days because I do plan my 2024 resolution with this channel is actually start playing Magic the Gathering again. And there's a lot of excitement of Magic the Gathering is actually bringing back organized play at the local level, at the regional level, at the national level, which I think is going to really reinvigorate Magic the Gathering. I'm excited. It feels like 2014 again. It feels like where people are excited to do anything. And, like Commander for the past few, or Magic, I even called it Commander. Magic for the past 3, 4, 5 years has just been so Commander focused, and for us like non-Commander players, we've just kind of been left out. It feels again like the good old days of 2014, where limited and constructed, especially like Standard or our King, and everyone is excited to actually brew and play decks. So hopefully we can get back to that sort of environment. I mean, people of course can play their Commander. I think there's two types of Magic players: people that are really more of like the board game players that enjoy Commander, and then there's the rest of us that really do like that cutthroat 1v1 format. And it'll be good to get back to those type of games. So anyway, let's go ahead and zoom this in and look at the cards and see what we got going on here. So the first one we have here is the Criminologist, the Benthic Criminologist. So whenever it attacks or enters the battlefield or attacks, you may sacrifice an artifact, draw a card. So this mechanic is in here quite a bit with sacrificing stuff and drawing cards. It's kind of a filler card at that point for a 4/5. You do have to use a resource to draw a card. I mean, clues in this one are a little bit different from like food tokens, because food tokens sometimes life isn't relevant, and drawing cards is. So clues you could always just sack for a draw anyway. So the Innocent Bystander, which whenever it is dealt 3 or more damage, investigate. So it probably, hopefully, can be traded in like a block or whatnot for a clue down the road. But it's kind of a filler. A 2/1 is inherently worse than a 2/2 because, of course, all the 1 power stuff are going to trade with it. So we have that. We have the Repeat Offender. If Repeat Offender is suspected, put a +1 counter, otherwise suspected. So you have to put the mana in it first, and then you can start putting the counters on it. So Suspect is both a good and a bad mechanic. There's things to actually like destroy suspect cards that I saw when I was opening up a booster box. And of course, this is a mechanic too that if you are suspected, you can actually get some value out of it. So we have the Nervous Gardener with the Disguise, which is the Morph ability. Turn faced up, you can search for a land card and put it into your hand. Does not put it on the battlefield. This is a lot of mana, but it is just a bear, and never, ever, ever underestimate the power of bears in Limited. The Due Diligence enters battlefield. A target creature you control gets +2/+2 in Vigilance, and creature you control other than enchanted creature. Okay, when enters the battlefield, another creature gets +2/+2, and then this one will get +2/+2 as well. So I like this because one of the problems with ours is they end up getting 2 for 1 quite a bit. So you try to attach it to a creature, it gets destroyed, or it gets destroyed on later turns, and you basically just lost 2 cards for like 1 removal spell. Due Diligence also acts as a tempo because it comes into play, attaches to something, and hopefully will give something else +2/+2, and you get that tempo advantage even if the card is then dealt with. So I do like them starting to buff Auras a little bit more. I mean, it's a fine line between making equipment and Auras just broken, and finding that where they're valuable enough. So the Gravestone Strider is a 1/3, which then add 1 mana in your color, only activate once per turn, so it'll help fix a little bit. And then you can exile Gravestone Strider from your graveyard to exile card from your graveyard. I'm not sure how well the graveyard mechanic is in this set. I know that it does work for uncovering evidence, which is a mechanic that is very popular in this limited environment for a lot of the self-mill strategies and whatnot. But so exiling specific cards, don't know if that's going to be relevant. The Auspicious Rival. A creature gets +2/+2 and investigate. This is an instant that basically does replace itself, or a kind of a pump spell combat trick, and it is instant speed, which is good. We have the Polygraph Orb, which is 5 mana. Enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library, put 2 of them in your hand, and the rest into your graveyard, and you lose 2 life. It is very, very expensive to cast this card, but you can start to collect some evidence for each opponent to lose 3 life unless they discard a card or sacrifice a creature. So these type of cards can be finishers, so I kind of do like this, like, draw spell plus finishers. If it's long, game enough, you can start making your opponent when they're out of cards, and creatures start to lose life. So I mean, this is another card that wasn't one of Ixalan that ended up being such a boss. The common that was the just target opponent sacks a creature, or opponent sacks a creature, and then you could flip it, and then it just drained the 1 life per turn. Isn't that the card I'm thinking of? This reminds me quite a bit of that. I wouldn't underestimate this in Limited because it absolutely can just win those grindy type matchups. So I know when I'm going to draft this format, I'm probably going to try to make something like this work. It's my favorite way to kind of to play Magic, especially limited, is do the value grind strategy. We have the Sumala Sentry, which is a 1/3 reacher. For 2 mana, whenever a face down permanent you control is turned face up, you put a +1 counter on it and on the Sentry. So it gets that morph strategy going. We have the Wench. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has Vigilance. That doesn't look like a Wench. And allows you to tap a target creature for 3 mana, and then you can sacrifice it to draw a card. It is a clue, so anything that's worse off clues can work with it. The equip cost is reasonable, so something to give +1/+1 to, like flyers, to equip this over. The tapping is pretty good too, because late game this can actually affect board states when you have plenty of mana too. So again, not another card to underestimate in the limited environment. We have the Furtive Courier. A 3/2, and can't be blocked as long as you've sacrificed an artifact this turn. And whenever it attacks, you draw a card, then discard a card. Pretty powerful card because 3 is quite the clock. And if you have enough clues to make this work, I think it is something that can get in there for that damage, especially if you're white, you're putting some equipments or some auras on it, and then it can take over the game in just a few turns. So don't underestimate the cannot be blocked effect in limited. It's much more powerful than it is in constructed when you have access for every deck having so much removal. All right, we have the Ill-Timed Explosion, which is 4 mana to draw 2 cards, and then you may discard 2 cards. When you do, it deals X damage to each creature, where X is the greatest value among cards discarded this way. So this is actually a really good looter. So for 4 mana, you can definitely, throwing away this 5 mana Polygraph Orb at that point, doing 5 damage to each creature, so it's a board wipe for 4 mana. And then also drawing cards and having the ability to get specific cards in the graveyard for that, like collecting evidence kind of mechanic that is in this set. I think this is a really, really powerful rare. It is in 2 colors though, so unfortunately we have to really be in these color schemes to make that work. We have the Basilica Stalker, which is a 3/4. When it deals combat damage to a player, you gain 1 life and surveil. 3/4 flying actually. And surveil, and then you can disguise it. I don't know, it feels kind of weak for a common. A lot of mana to be pumping into a 6/4, or into 6 mana for a 3/4 flying with sort of an upside. The disguise cost is quite high as well on this one, so to me it feels kind of like a trap card. At that point for 6 mana you really want a bigger finisher, but you have to see how slow this format is if that actually does come into effect. So might be speeding these up a little bit quicker as we go through. But it does seem to be a pretty even spread here on this. I'm liking the blue. At least the Courier and the Ill-Timed Explosion seem pretty good. And that's kind of a cool little combo with the Ill-Timed Explosion. So you kill your own innocent bystander, you at least do get some value off of it. So we have the Agency Coroner. You can sacrifice another creature, draw a card. If the sacrificed creature was suspected, draw 2 cards instead. It is a very, very high mana cost for this 3/6. So I'm assuming that they've built this format to be very, very grindy. And so cards like this, and maybe the 3/6 body, I'm trying to think of a format in the past, was it Kaldheim, that just had like a big bodied creature. It was like a 2/7. And it was actually quite relevant because it could block all the 6/6s in the format. And there was quite a few 6/6s that were very relevant that people drafted very highly. And the 2/7 just blocked them. And then it had the ability of like tapping for 3 to do 3 damage and gain 3 life or something like that. Something that so you'd think would be not that, or 2 life or something. It was a thing that was very significant, but ended up being pretty good as your curve topper in those decks. So again, you have to wait to see the format to see how well this card will impact. If there's a lot of 5/5s you need to block, the Agency Coroner can definitely be a powerhouse in this format. The Slime Against Humanity, for 3 mana, create a 0/0 green ooze creature token with trample, put X+1 counters where X is 2 plus the total number of cards you own in exile in your graveyard that are oozes or are named Slime Against Humanity. A deck can have any number of cards named Slime Against Humanity. All right, so this is going to be cool because this common will probably be worth some money because people are going to be trying to build commander decks using Slime Against Humanity with the, what is the Ripple card? The thing that gives all your spells Ripple. Yeah, there we go. So we have the Novice Inspector. This is just the reprint of the Thraben Inspector. Kind of weird that they want to allow 8 of these in the Pauper format or 8 of these in the Pioneer format. So, kind of crazy. Jaded Analysis. This card is just power. So you don't even know how good this card is. You haven't played a lot of formats in Magic the Gathering. All right, we have the Jaded Analyst, which is me oftentimes analyzing the market for Magic. We have Defender, which I do know has a Simic kind of theme to it. is a 3/2, and when you draw your second card each turn, it loses defender and gains vigilance until end of turn. But 3/2s are good just to oftentimes Azorius or Dimir, they really, or even Simic, they do like to clog the board until they can, go over the top of the aggro decks. And this is a great way to trade with like typically the aggressive Boros strategies. So there we have the 5/5 for 5 mana. If when it attacks, if it's not suspected, you may suspect it. So there's a 5/5 for 5. You can see the 3/6 just blocks it on curve, and this 3/6 is definitely gaining some value after analyzing some other cards. We have the Thinking Cap, +1/+2, and equipped at a detective because there's lots of detectives in this. And the equip costs 3, but 1 if it is going to a detective. I think it's very narrow. The chase is on. Target creature gets +3/+0 and gains first strike, and then investigate for 3 mana. Pretty good, because this is can be used pseudo creature removal, meaning you can throw it on something, give it first strike, not use your creature in like a attacking or blocking scenario. It can be used to push through some damage, and the investigate is quite nice because in like a limited format, this is going to draw you a card. So this is going to be card advantage, and card advantage is everything in limited format. All right, we have the Flotsam and the Jetsam. So we mill 3 cards and then investigate. So that goes with like the collecting evidence strategies, or many different strategies that do want to use the graveyard as a resource. And we have the Jetsam of each opponent mills 3 cards. Then you may cast a spell from each opponent's graveyard without paying its mana cost of a spell cast. This way is putting the graveyard X out instead. So the 6 mana is pretty cool. You can just mill 3 and investigate if you just want a cantrip. If not, the Jetsam side of it can definitely be... I wish you would mill yourself too, but each opponent mills 3, and then for each opponent's graveyard without paying its mana cost, then you may cast a spell. So hopefully you'll get something besides 3 lands. And Commander, of course, this is much better card for 6 mana because hopefully you can hit some big spells, but it's kind of risky and limited. With oftentimes the 6 mana is not going to actually pay for itself. You're not going to get enough value off of it that you would just by relying on another 6-drop. So we have the Flourishing Bloomkin. It gets +1 for each forest you control, and the Disguise 5. And when it is turned face up, you search life for up to 2 forest cards and reveal them, put 1 on the battlefield tapped, and the other in your hand. So, in limited, it's a little bit rough when you're going 3 colors, which this might end up happening, like splashing a color. But if you could go mono green, I could see this actually seeing play. It's gonna be a 2/2 bear that just keeps getting bigger and bigger. In like a standard format, there's a lot of like stompy based cards that were printed. We have another like wannabe what's the beast, the questing beast type card, the 4/4 haste death touch creature. So mono green could be quite aggressive in like constructed play. Unfortunately, I think that like mono red and mono white a little more aggressive at this point than like a mono green stompy. The convenient target is a 1 red enchant creature. When it enters the battlefield, it's a suspect enchanted creature, and it gets +1/+1, and they return a covenant target from your graveyard to your hand. So if it goes to your graveyard, that's a way to just put on. We've seen this type of ability really good in like white pauper decks, and so it's definitely kind of neat. There will be a commander deck that I have, the red heroic Kobold, that I think this would be kind of nice in. So as it is a renewable resource. We have the blood splatter analysis. So we get another rare in multicolored. When it enters the battlefield, it does 3 damage to our creature and opponent controls, so 2 mana to do 3, which is really good. And when one or more creature dies, mill a card and put a bloodstain counter on blood splatter analysis. Then sacrifice it, has 5 or more counters on it. When you do, return to a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So, you're getting your value back there, but it can't hit an opponent, it just goes to target creature, so sorcery speed, removal, kind of narrow at that point. Milling cards, it's okay. Kind of weird as a rare, but we do get Vindicated from our rare being multicolored here to getting this Aurelia's Vindicator, which is a 4/2 flying lifelink ward 2, disguise X +4, and when it's turned faced up, exile up to X target creatures from battlefield and or creature cards from graveyards. When it leaves the battlefield, return the exile cards to your hands. So this is really cool because you can use it on an empty board of your opponents just to exile your own creatures from graveyards, and then when it dies, then you get those back as card advantage, or you can exile your opponents, and or you can exile cards on your opponent's battlefield, or ones that just have ETB effects that you're not even using, that are kind of just worthless in the current board state. And then if they do decide to kill the Vindicator, then you have access to those again. So, but flying lifelink is pretty good. The 2 toughness isn't nearly as the liability with that ward 2 on it, because it's going to make some removal spells a little bit tougher to target the Vindicator. So I actually do really like that one. We have a Shady Informant. when it dies, deals 2 damage to any target, and then disguise for 4. Pretty generic, pretty high cost there for the casting of this sucker. And then we'll get on to the next one. So we have the Offender at Large. Offender at Large, which is a 5/4. So again, you can see that 3/6 is really coming into effect with a bunch of 5 power stuff from red. When it enters the battlefield, it is turn face up to one target creature +2/+0 until end of turn. You can do that at, like, it's even faster than instant speed with Morph. So Morph you can turn it face up, and you cannot actually respond to the actual turning. You can't like remove it in response. The things will go off. The triggers will go off on the turning it face up, which is kind of cool. A lot of new players don't understand that interaction, but it's a very, very quick mechanic. Yeah, split second. So giant rogue for 5. We have the Extract a Confession, which is additional cost to cast a spell. You may collect evidence 6. So again, you exile cards with total mana 6 or more from your graveyard. So this is kind of neat because these split cards that I saw before, like this Flotsam, I think this is going to see a lot of play in Limited, just to throw the Flotsam in the graveyard, because now it is an 8 mana, because you read both sides, and when this is reading in the graveyard, it's not 2, it's not 6, it's 8. And so it's very easy to collect evidence with a card like this that has 8 mana that you can get in your graveyard for 2 mana. So I'm revaluing that card, and it's much better than I previously anticipated. So each opponent sacrifices a creature. If evidence was collected, instead each opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power. So the 2 mana, each opponent sacrifices a creature. Really, really strong, man. We can bring back Hexproof quite easily in the Standard and the Pioneer formats now with a lot of these sacrifice abilities. So here we have the Topiary Panther for 6/5 basic land cycling. This is like, how many sets in a row have they done this like basic land cycling? I think they're wanting to make Limited a lot more easy to make sure you don't get mana screwed, and they're adding cards like this. And again, collecting evidence. This is a great card for collect evidence. Just throw this in the graveyard early on if you're in collect evidence decks, or mill it in other ways. And if not, late game, you have a 6/5, almost a Colossal Dreadmaw. We're not quite there with the 6/5. We have the Defenestrated Phantom, the 4/3 Disguise, kind of filler, but again, 6 mana. Throw it in the graveyard. These things get a lot better. We have a Reach 6/7, a lot of generic cards. So they didn't really do a lot of these generic things in the last few sets. Now we're having a lot of like vanilla-y. I know they have the disguise type factor to them, and they're really big by, turning them face up and like, aha, I got you. But these are very vanilla in this set. Another Strider, we saw the sucker. And we have another Auspicious Arrival, which we saw that sucker. And we have a Burden of Proof, which flashes in and enchant creature at +2/+2 as long as it's a detective. Otherwise, it's base power and toughness 1/1. So we've seen this mechanic before. They had one clear back in like Innistrad that actually was a lot better, because if you put it on a vampire, it got +2/+2. If you didn't put it on a vampire, it got -2, -2. And situationally, it was pretty decent. So yeah, if it's a detective you control, so they fixed that. So the problem, like if it went on opponent's vampires, like sometimes it's like, oh man, I can't actually make this work because my opponent's playing vampires. Burden of Proof can actually go on an opponent detective. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So it has base power and toughness 1/1 and can't block detectives. So Burden of Proof is kind of cool in that detective base deck. So we are getting some mechanics that I think are a lot more interesting when it comes to Limited. That's like I was saying in the intro of this video. You're missing out. If you're just a constructed player, like, I get the mentality. I get, like, wanting to play at the highest level, the most competitive level. But man, Limited is so beautiful. You need to play more Limited. And I wish they'd incentivize it in Wizards of the Coast with actually making limited tournaments again. All right, when the clandestine meddler enters the battlefield, suspected one other target creature you control, and whenever one or more suspected creature you control attacks, you surveil one. Great way to get evidence in the graveyard and other mechanics that utilize the graveyard. And it's 3/2 for 3. It's great. The Evidence Examiner. It's a 2/2 at the beginning of your combat. On your turn, you may collect evidence 4, like we just said. And whenever you collect evidence, you investigate. So it's a great way to collect evidence as well as have a payoff all in one. And it's a detective. Hey. So we have this like awesome green-blue detective strategy kind of going on. The Case of the Pilfered Proof. So whenever a detective enters the battlefield, more detectives, battlefield under your control, and whenever a detective you control is turned face up, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And to solve this, you control 3 or more detectives. If unsolved, solve at the beginning of your end step. So it solves at the beginning of your end step after you do this. Yeah. So if you meet these requirements. So at first I thought these were like sagas, but it doesn't look like that. It looks like I'll have to look on how these cases work. If one or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus a clue token are created instead. So you make a token, you also get a clue to go with it. We've seen this mechanic happen quite often in the past few sets of creating these. We have the Forensic Gadgeteer. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, investigate is the detective on color. So far I'm really liking white-blue. Activate abilities of artifacts you control cost 1 less to activate. This effect cannot reduce mana. Okay, this is going to be a powerhouse in so many commander decks by activated abilities. I mean, it's going to cause a lot of crazy infinite combos with just being able to reduce that. Especially if you can have multiples of these out there. What's the sword that untaps things? And yeah, all right. And great way to investigate. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, you investigate. That's a lot of clue tokens coming down. So this card is a powerhouse. I really like it. All right, so I'm demanding some answers here for why they created such a powerful card. Additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice an artifact, or discard a card to draw 2 cards. So they gave this to red, kind of the sacrifice ability. So it's like kind of taking the black mechanic of sacrificing stuff and the looting mechanic, and it is instant speed. So it's just strictly better than like a thrill possibilities because it allows you to sacrifice like a clue or a treasure or a food token. So I think this is going to be a highly sought after common card because of how versatile it is, and we know how often we see things like thrill possibilities or cathartic reunion, those type of cards. So, yep, really, really strong card. Alrighty, so we are 25 minutes into my slow analysis here. When we have another detective, whenever you attack with 3 or more creatures, it gets +2/+0, so it'll be a 3/3. Not too shabby. We have another detective on color here with Flying Vigilance Disguise, which is actually more reasonable disguise, just 2 mana. And when it's turn faced up, you can tap or untap a creature. It's pretty good just for the Flying Vigilance. I mean, it's evasive. It can block, attack, and block. We have the Red Herring. Attacks each turn of combat if able. A 2/2 for 2 haste. Wow, that's pretty good. Bear. And you can always sacrifice it to draw a card. And it is a clue, so it works off any clues. The Toxin Analysis. Target creature gets Death Touch, Lifelink, and Investigate. So, I mean, pretty good removal. And you're getting, again, cantripping. So they're creating a lot of these instances in this set. We've seen this ability quite often in other sets, Death Touch and Lifelink, but then throwing Investigate just pushes it to play abilities. Because a lot of these get like ignored. They're oftentimes like the 24th, 25th card in your pool, and you're like, yeah, I'd rather have something more reasonable I can rely on, and this card gets cut. But now that it cantrips, this card's great, because you can just cast it. Just cast it for the sake of casting it to get a clue and triggering something else. So, all right, we have the Airtight Alibi, and enters the battlefield, untap an enchanted creature, gains hexproof. If it's suspected, it's no longer suspected, and it gets +2/+2 and can't become suspected. So I'm thinking of this already in elf decks that want to untap their elves. And there's a couple elves nowadays, a couple druids I think nowadays that add mana equal to their power. There's one in standard at the moment. That's kind of neat with this sucker. The Sanitarium Automaton for 2 mana, you just surveil when it enters the battlefield. And we also have the Murder, which gets, of course, the set is murders, so of course they have to print that. And we have a Slimy Dual Leech, a 2/4, being your combat on your control, on a combat on your turn. Target creature you control with power 2 or less gets +1/+1/0 Death Touch, so it can target itself and be a 3/4. The Caught Red-Handed cannot be countered, and you can control target creature until on a turn. Untap it, it gains haste and suspect it. But it's instant speed, though. Okay, so I haven't printed one of these instant speed ones in quite a while. And that's a lot better, actually, because you can actually cast this on combat, take something of your opponents, and block their own creatures with it. It's pretty good. Don't underestimate the instant speed. Instant speed gain control is really, really cool. The Sudden Setback. The owner of target spell or non-land permanent puts it on top or bottom of their library. It's fine. You can basically counter it, kind of set them back. But it's not countering, so it can get around cards that can't be countered, like this one. Because it goes on top of it just goes on top or bottom. We have the Aftermath Analysis. Whenever it enters the battlefield, mill 3 cards. So 2 mana, mill 3, and then sacrifice an analyst. Return land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tap. Okay, this is a pretty sweet card in Commander for sure. In self-mill strategies too, this is actually quite powerful. The 1/3 is fine. You mill 3 cards. On turn 4, you chump block sack, get some ramp from it. Really like it. Really, I'm liking Simic. I'm actually really liking Simic with our strategy so far. But we do have some powerhouses in white. And now, speaking of which, we have Teysa. one of my favorite cards ever printed was the OG Taste. That was my very first Commander deck. We have the Opulent Oligarch with Death Touch 2/3. At the beginning of your end step, investigate for each opponent who lost life this turn. And whenever a clue you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, to create a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying in this ability. And it triggers once each turn. So you, of course, want to try to make it happen on both turns to gain as much value as possible. This is just a powerhouse of a card. Now I'm really liking white-black. And we have another Novice Inspector. So we got 2 of the Thraben Inspector reprints, which is great. Yeah, white-black is looking pretty spiffy with the Murder and some of the other stuff to put it to oh, wow. So far some good options here. Actually still even liking the red-black, or even splashing red with white-black red. So far looks pretty decent. We have the Cerebral Confiscation, which is allowing you to either discard 2 cards or get a specific card from your opponent. So not too shabby. We have the Vichugazi Inspector, another detective. Additional cost to cast a spell, you may collect evidence 6, and then it enters the battlefield. If evidence was collected, put a +1 on the counter on target creature, and you gain 2 life. And again, the evidence 6 seems pretty rough, but as you can see, if you've cast some of these like split cards, it's easy to make it work. We have the Gadget Technician. Enters the battlefield or is turn face up. Create a 1/1 Thopter. So you're getting a 1/1 Thopter with flying and a 3/2 back, and the disguise is actually quite neat with it. And we have another Hotshot Investigators. We haven't had a lot of duplicates so far, have we? We have the Orangutan. So this is enters the battlefield. You destroy up to 1 target artifact, or you can sacrifice an artifact to put 2 +1 counters. So it's going to be a 4/4 for 3 mana with reach, or destroying an artifact. This is actually a very powerful card. So they've given upside. There's been many of these cards printed before that have been very playable in like artifact-dominated formats, and they've just given an upside that you can also just have a big beater. We have the Reconstruction, Macaw Reconstruction. This spell costs 2 less to cast if a creature card was put in a graveyard from anywhere. So it costs 2, and then you can return 2 cards. Unfortunately, it's not instant speed, which is kind of weird. We have Demanding More Answers, this time in the Clue background, or the whatever background you want to call this, the showcase. We have the Repulsive Mutation, put X+1 counter on target creature. You control, then counter up to 1 target spell unless its controller pays mana equal to the greatest power among creatures. So if I'm reading this right, you're putting the +1s on counters, and then you can counter up to 1 target spell. Instant speed, this is pretty good. This is a strong mana dump late game. You can trade for something, buff something up. I actually like this card a lot. Pretty cool Simic tech here. We got the Rope. It's +1/+2 has reach and can't be blocked by more than 1 creature. So cool. It's giving defensive and aggressive options with the Rope. And you can sacrifice a draw card because it is a Clue equipment. We found the Rope. A Long Goodbye. Can't be countered. Another card that can't be countered. Destroy target creature or planeswalker with mana value 3 or less. Pretty good. Pretty sweet. That is a great removal spell. Now really liking white-black. Case for the Ransack Lab. Instant sorcery spells cost 1 less. And to solve, you've cast 4 more instant spells this turn. And when solved, whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell, draw a card. Did I just mention that I really like blue? I mean, blue-black's pretty good. Maybe splash the white or splash the blue for the really good cards there. And speaking of which, they really want to bait me into playing blue. The Coveted Falcon for 1/4. When attacks can control target permanent you own but don't control. Okay, that's a little bit harder to make in limited. When it is turn face up to target opponent gains control of any number of target permanents you control and draw a card for each one they gain control of this way. So there are a lot of like switcheroo decks that are going to love this because commander decks have not had the best way to make people gain control of stuff. The Coveted Falcon is going to be pretty sweet with that. And then we have the Lead Pipe. Equip creature 2/0, and whenever equip creature dies, opponent loses 1 life. So it's this is a really good aggressive card to put on evasive stuff. So haven't seen a lot of like quick cards coming out. I've noticed this does seem a little slower. A lot of things that do clog the board up. I'll have to wait and see how this actually lasts pack. And we'll call it good here, of course, because we only have 6 packs to start with. We got Shock as a reprint. Another nice little red. Toxis Analysis, which investigates, which works off beautiful Teysa with our investigate strategy. And so far, white-black is definitely the route to go, I would say, with a close second to like blue-white or blue-green. We do have 1 pack left, Kevin. You are jumping the gun here. We have They Went This Way. Ramps and investigates, so we can really ramp, and I've noticed there's a lot of ways to actually utilize the ramp by spending a ton of mana for stuff. We have another Seasoned Consultant and another Granite Witness. So we're starting to get into our duplicates here, and the Crowd Control Warden. 4/4 with Disguise 5, and when it enters the battlefield or is turned face up, but X plus 1 counters on it, where X is the number of other creatures you control. It can be pretty big late, but it's no evasion on it whatsoever. No vigilance, nothing, so it's kind of a weird card. We have the Makeshift Binding. Enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls until Makeshift Binding leaves the battlefield and you gain 2 life. Pretty good. Great removal, actually. Yeah, so white-black continues to be very, very strong in this pool. And we have the Wisp Drinker Vampire. Whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, you put it lose 1 life and you gain 1 life. And this is just perfect synergy with Teysa. Even comes on curve. And creatures you control with power 2 or less gain Death Touch and Lifelink for 7 mana. That's not the bigger deal here. It's you're going to get a lot of value off of, clues, drawing cards, draining opponent. It's everything you want. Like, this strategy, the white-black, is full. Like, I can see making a deck and having playables and bombs. They actually can take over the game. The rest of the color combination, they're a little bit lacking. Like, not really a lot of instant sorceries or artifacts to make the blue strategy work as much as I want it to. We have the Faithlight. A creature gains hexproof until an determined enters the battlefield, and it gets +1 with 0 and flying. Pretty relevant for 2 mana. Another not on my watch. Yeah, we're in white. And another Forensic Researcher. So untap target permanent you control and collect evidence 3 to tap target creature you don't control. Tolsimir. So 5. This is pretty splashable, though, for just 1 green. So we have a 3/2 lifelink when it enters the battlefield. Create the legendary 5/5 green and white wolf creature token. And whenever wolf you control attacks, if Tolsimir attack, this combat target creature and opponent control blocks that wolf if able. So we also have the Curious Cadaver, and it's hard to see what those color combinations are because it looks like a white card, but it's actually a Dimir card, which is a zombie detective 3/1. Whenever you sacrifice a clue, return Carnivorous Cadaver from a graveyard to hand. So again, this one's really good with the Teysa synergy if we want to splash into blue. So like splashing blue, splashing green, I could see happening just to find some other bombs in here. But that's kind of the route I would go. I mean, the takeaway from this of what I really, really, really like, there was some good Simic strategies for sure. We got some, or Selesnya strategies. We're all over the place as far as like our multicolored cards. It looks like 2 of each pairing we have. But the cards that really, really stand out to me is going to be the Teysa. It's just got the Teysa and removal package from the black-red. When in doubt, stick to your removal package. Whatever removal package looks the best, the way that you can actually, if you can control your opponent's bombs, then you don't have to worry too much about being the deck that has the bomb. You can just have some of these mid-range cards become your finishers. And oftentimes, a lot of new players, they focus too much on like heavy hitter cards. Cards that they're like, wow, this card will take over the game. This is they prioritize finishers, especially in draft. And when you actually, in actuality, it'd be like, definitely prioritize things like fixing and things like removal. And then anything at that point can be, and then curve, and then really focusing on a curve. And then at that point, like if you have a good curve, good fixing, if you need it, a good way to actually enable your curve, then you can just take over games just by having the removal to support that. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I will be back to the month of February, really trying to grind out some videos. So hopefully we can go back to some of the glory years of the Rogue Deck Builder and figure out some content that you would like to see. As you can kind of tell in my attitude, I'm a lot more excited to play Magic the Gathering. One of the reasons why you haven't actually seen me on this channel as much as I used to, and my other channels, I've actually been playing a lot of games at the store. And so it's great to finally, like, there was a good almost year where I didn't have any enthusiasm to even play Magic. I even used to joke that, it was like a bad marriage. The only reason I was sticking with it, I already made this commitment to this damn game. I have a store, and so I had to play. I felt like it was kind of a chore to play. But now it feels like I'm really, really back in the swing of things, and it's a lot more fun to me to sit down and actually grind out some games and have a lot of fun doing so. So hope you enjoyed this analysis. Hope I brought some good conversation to the mix with my analysis for, I've been doing this for a lot of years. So hopefully you find it helpful. If you do, definitely give this video a like and a subscribe. But we didn't look at the promo. So maybe this actually does change things up. I just see this, but we got Yaris, which is a really cool one with creatures control of haste. And whenever one or more face-down creatures deals combat damage, player draw a card. And then when a face-down creature you control dies, return to the battlefield face down or turn control, and then turn it face up. Okay, that's a bomb. So now I have to reevaluate how good green and red is. But cool thing about League, though, is even though you can actually play multiple decks, even things with limited, it's like, okay, well, I have this strategy that I'm working on, and a lot of times when the colors don't compete with each other, then you don't have to worry about which deck they'd go into. And we have Voja, the Jaws of the Conclave, which is more of the Selesnya. So we get 2 promos, huh? Vigilance Trample Ward 3. Whenever it attacks, you put X plus 1 counters. When each creature you control or X the number of elves you control. Draw a card for each wolf you control. So it's wolves and elves. Pretty cool. Oh, here, might as well. You guys can have the arena code. For ever made it this far, thank you for attending this pre-release kind of primer here or whatever. There's your arena code to enjoy those 6 packs from Karlov Manor. Again, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you are interested in getting these pre-release packs and kind of doing this in your own play group, definitely come over to the patreon.com/roguedeckbuilder. Unfortunately, that's the only way I sell right now. It's just much easier to deal with people online that have kind of a, I know personally at that point, you deal with so much like problems, we'll just put it that way, with dealing with randoms on the internet when selling online, and that's why I just quit doing it. So hope you know where I'm coming from there. I'd love to have you on Patreon. Like I said, we have a great Discord community. I think you've probably been hearing it go off there in the background because I forgot to turn it off. But it's a great way to actually interact with me personally, and I love to be your guide for all your TCG player needs. That's what I really think is the best thing about joining the community is, I have questions about deck boxes, sleeves. I've been in this industry forever. I can help guide you towards certain products that I think would fit your play style and your needs. Hope you enjoyed this video. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thanks for watching.